Thank you, Morgan. Quite frankly, I'm not really sure why I'm here because I'm not an expert in energy. I've a proud alum of Mines and had a 42-year career at Kiewit, and I learned so much here, and I've been so grateful to be re-engaged with the school. And so when they asked me to talk, I couldn't figure out what I really could add to this topic. So I guess what I would tell you, I'm going to tell you, we're down in the weeds. We're just a contractor and an engineer, and we're actually the ones that build the stuff and price the stuff and get this stuff that everybody wants to talk about in the energy transition. So I will apologize in advance of my talk. I'm going to be way down in the weeds, and I'm not going to be talking about big policy issues or any of that stuff, but I just want to give you a sense of what's really going on out there in the world that we live in, and basically that's a North American world. But there is no doubt that there's going to be trillions of dollars spent here in North America on this energy transition. Unfortunately, history tells us we're going to waste a lot of money. And so I think it's part of our challenge, and certainly in my business, and I'd say the regulators and owners and engineers and contractors and suppliers and everybody, we got to figure out how to do this energy transition efficiently. Because unfortunately, history tells us we've done a lousy job over time. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I see in terms of what the marketplace and some level of granularity, and then move forward and give you actually some of my thoughts about some things we could do. Just very quickly, I'm going to give you a quick overview of Kiewit to establish our creds. We've been around since 1884. You can read the stuff on the slide. We are basically a North American contractor. We do a lot of things really, really well. We did $17 billion of work across North America in about every sector that you could imagine. So we employ a lot of people, we've got a lot of engineers and whatnot. So I think we're a player. It's a picture of a project we completed recently, a gas-fired power plant. It's called Three Rivers. We built about 23 gigawatts of power in the last 5 years. That's about enough power for my note says 1.25 million homes and businesses in the greater Chicago area. We've got about 10 gigawatts of power plants under construction. These are all gas-fired power plants. We have been the largest builder of gas-fired power plants across the United States for the last 12 or 15 years, and so we've built a lot and kind of think we know what we're doing. And that market today is as hot as ever. I would have told you 4 or 5 years ago that market's going to go away, totally replaced by renewables, and didn't happen. And so what's happening, that market is as hot today as ever before. We've done stuff in the oil and gas space, significant stuff. This is a Cove Point LNG terminal in Lusby, Maryland. Ironically, this plant was an import terminal. Originally, it was built as an import terminal. 25 years ago, everybody thought we're going to run out of natural gas. As silly as that seems today, it was an import terminal to bring natural gas into the United States. Our job was to turn around and make it an export terminal. We're active in the solar market. We have about 2.3 gigawatts of solar projects underway right now. This is the Yellowbud Solar Farm in Ohio, about 274 megawatts. I don't know how many acres that one covers, but it looks like a fair bit. We have one going on outside of Las Vegas right now that's 6,000 acres of solar panels. We have another one going on in Texas and north in the Dallas area that's also about 6,000 acres. Just to finish off Kiewit's creds, this is how Engineering News Record ranks contractors in North America, and you can see the numbers there. And so I think the punchline is we're a player. We're a player in the energy market and have been for a long time. We see it from a very different perspective than policymakers and others because we're the ones down on the ground building it, pricing it, making sure it works right when we get it finished. So, given all that, what's Kiewit's perspective on this marketplace right now? I would tell you that there are more mega, and when I say mega, I mean multi-billion-dollar individual projects going on than ever before in this energy space. And in compounding with that, I think there are fewer and fewer people that can actually build a $2 or $3 billion project, bring it in on budget, on schedule. Throw in a little bit of supply constraints by some of the major manufactured equipment people, and you've got a recipe for a problem of projects that are going to be way over budget and late. I mentioned before about the troubled history of our industry. When I say our industry, I'm talking mega projects, whether it be in the oil and gas space or in the power space. And I reference a couple of books here that I've read over the years, Industrial Mega Projects by Murrow and How Big Things Get Done. And they're pretty well researched and documented about the troubled history of big projects. And as a society, we ought to care. We ought to care. I mean, okay, maybe we decide as a society we want to spend $1 trillion. Do we want to spend $5 trillion? I don't know. I'm not in the policy-making decision or world. But look at some of my examples there. The Vogtle nuclear power plant, which was built, just completed here in the last year or so. If you go back to the nuclear power industry that was built, plants that were built in the 70s and 80s, so what are we talking, 40, 50 years ago? They were typically over budget and late and whatnot. And here we are, fast forward to 2024, the Vogtle plant and how late it was, 7 years late, 3 times the original budget. So apparently we've learned nothing in 40 or 50 years. This was a $10 billion project, ended up over 30. Oops. So be thankful you're not having to buy electricity in Georgia. The Canadian oil sands have been historically one that's been overrun. I remember CEOs up in Canada and Canadian oil sands telling me, if you brought a project in 50% over budget, you're a hero. You know, I don't think that's something we should aspire to. The Trans Mountain Pipeline I referred to there. A little bit of irony. The Trans Mountain Pipeline in Canada goes from the Canadian oil sands up near Fort McMurray and cuts across and follows an existing pipeline down to Vancouver, BC. It is the replacement for the Keystone XL pipeline. When the U.S. government denied that permit to move that oil that way, from Fort McMurray down to the Canadian Gulf Coast, the Canadians said, well, okay, we'll move the oil to our port at Vancouver, BC. Unfortunately, it cost a little bit more than they thought. It was what do I have up there? 5 times the original budget? Oops. Thank goodness it was the Canadian government was the owner, the only one that could possibly have afforded. Another current project going on, the Golden Pass LNG job down in South Texas, and with all due respect to my ExxonMobil friends, I know it's not your fault, but another project going over late, and one of the major contractors on that job has filed for bankruptcy. That takes the supply off the market. So unfortunately, we see this trend, and I'm really disturbing to me that we see this trend as an industry. We can't get smarter, because if the world wants us to spend trillions of dollars for the energy transition, can't we figure out how to spend it smartly and efficiently and get it done? I hope so. So when I say our energy markets, this is the markets that I talk about. We touch all of these kinds of projects in some way, shape, or form, whether we're actually building something for somebody, designing it for them, or maybe giving them an initial cost and schedule estimate. So these are all the marketplaces that I see that Kiewit is currently touching. There is a tremendous amount of installed capacity, of electrical capacity in the United States. But again, you've all read about the AI boom and whatnot. That's going to change the dynamic dramatically. This is energy capacity, and what it shows is the history of what has happened up to 24, and then somebody's projection going forward, and I think it comes from the Energy Information Association in Bloomberg. So that's capacity, and you can see the split between the different types of where the capacity is going to be in the marketplace. This is actual generation, and I think this slide is probably outdated, probably doesn't take into account what's going on with the AI boom. We just won a very, very large contract for Microsoft to build them a brand new data center up in Wisconsin, multiple billion-dollar job, because they said, go quick. We got to get these AI data centers going on. So this is actually where the generation happens, not necessarily where the capacity is. So over the last 20 years, we've spent about $10 trillion building energy projects in the United States. You can see that that's a lot of money, but you can see what that ramp up has been, and you can see the split between the types of energy that was being, the energy sources that were being built. The energy transition, ETS, is if things kind of moved at a sort of an what the economics would say. NZC is net zero stuff, and how much money people are guessing, emphasis on guessing has to be spent. But round the number out, whatever, up, down, however you want, it's a lot of money to be spent in a relatively short period of time. And I'm sure some of the other speakers over the course today will talk about the difference between capacity and generation. And one of the gas, for example, has a capacity factor of about 59%. So they install 100 megawatts and they get 59 out. That's over the course of a period of time. Solar, it's not even in Las Vegas does the sun shine in the middle of the night. So that's the problem with solar. You can see wind. Wind is intermittent. We all know that. Look at nuclear. Look at nuclear being as high as 93%. And I would submit to you that the average person in the public still hates nuclear power. Despite an announcement this week that I think Microsoft was going to go buy the 3 Mile Island facility and start it up. Good luck. It makes probably a whole lot of sense. But good luck if you're in the business of needing to generate electricity. So this is actually the map of some of the stuff that we're actually doing. These are real life projects that we've designed, and we've got real life people on the ground. You see them scattered around the U.S. We're sort of in an enviable position right now for us as a company to turn stuff down. I was talking to our folks the other day, and they said, one of the power companies called up and said, hey, I need you to build me a 400 megawatt gas plant. And we just said, sorry, I don't know when I can get to it. And oh, by the way, you won't be able to get a turbine from somebody like Siemens until 2028 or maybe 2029. They're totally sold out. Okay. In a way, it's very good for our business, but it's one of the dynamics that's going on right now. Natural gas is a hot thing right now. We are doing a lot of stuff in solar and battery. Morgan mentioned about batteries. We're doing these projects. There's still a lot of them. Some of them are kind of mom and pop, small stuff. I showed you the bigger one there in Ohio. Talked about the bigger ones. But there's a lot of smaller mom and pop stuff. So there's a lot of activity in that market in battery storage. But large scale electric, utility grade, utility size battery storage is still a ways off. Morgan talked about the cost for battery storage costs. Yep, no doubt they've declined. They've declined pretty substantially, but I think there's still some interesting chemistry or physics problems to deal with that hopefully somebody here at Mines can figure out. But battery storage, to be really meaningful, to really move the needle in the energy, in my humble opinion, is a ways off. But people are investing. You can see the list of the companies there. These are major utilities: Duke, Dominion, Berkshire Hathaway. That's Warren Buffett's company. You can see the kinds of things that they're investing in solar, energy storage and whatnot. So there's still major investments that these utilities are doing. Now, one, I don't have a slide on it, but I do want to comment on it. One other big market that we're involved in right now is transmission and distribution. The grid in the United States is in sore need of dramatic upgrades. Two examples that we're currently working on. One is a buried 230-mile long DC high voltage power cable, copper cable about yay big around, from the Canadian border down the Hudson Valley and into Manhattan. 230 miles of direct current buried line, buried the whole way. They're going to bring in hydropower out of Canada and bring it into Manhattan to their zero carbon emission goals. Okay. I mean, I don't know if it makes economic sense or not, but the big investment house Blackstone is funding it, and they're going to pay us $2 billion to build it, so I say, okay. Secondly, Berkshire Hathaway Energy, Warren Buffett's company out in the West. The grid needs to be dramatically improved for not only for reliability reasons, but also fire protection. You read about the fires going on in California that are sparked by the transmission lines that come together and whatnot. They're going to spend $10 billion over the next 10 years to upgrade the grid in the Pacific Northwest. You know, and these are just some examples of going on. So transmission and distribution, improving the U.S. grid is a big market right now. Low carbon capture. I've got a list here of projects, and you can see where they're scattered all over everywhere. The good news is there's a lot of things that people are studying and trying to understand, trying to get their mind around how much it's going to cost, what process is going to be used, and how do you build it. The bad news is that's all just studies. Nobody's pulling the trigger to say, let's actually build one. They are not economic now. Now, I don't pretend to understand how all the government's tax credits and the things work, but I'm telling you, these things are just being studied, and we'll tell the owner, well, it's going to cost this much, and they say, well, I can't afford that. So I don't know what the future of carbon capture is right now, but there's a lot of activity, people studying it, and whether we can figure out as a country how to make it economic, I don't know. But the technology is not happening today. Hydrogen is another one. Everybody wants to burn hydrogen to produce power. And you can see what do I have on the chart. I've got blue hydrogen, green hydrogen, gray hydrogen, all sorts of ways to make hydrogen. You folks in the room here know more about that than me, I'm sure. But the problems of, okay, how do I store it? How do I move it to where it needs to be used? There is a large natural gas plant we're building in Utah for Berkshire Hathaway Energy, that part of the requirement was that that it be capable of burning at least 30% hydrogen along with the natural gas. The turbine manufacturer reluctantly agreed to that. I don't know if it'll happen or not. That's not our problem. But that's the kind of thing people wanting to burn hydrogen to make electricity. Cost impacts. What's going on in building stuff right now? You know, our staff of people, the cost for getting more engineers, design engineers, construction professionals is up about 40% over the last 4 years. Our craft workforce throughout the country, continued escalation. So I'd say escalation in labor costs is a real issue in this, and it's going to translate into higher costs for things we're going to build. In the procurement side of things, and I've touched on it already, there are huge supply chain constraints. I think manufacturers coming out of the COVID, when things happen, and now things are booming again, they're not bothering or wanting to build extra capacity. They said, you know what, I can make more money with the existing capacity. I'll just raise the price of stuff and push it out. I told you the example of Siemens with a big gas turbine. They said, you can buy a slot, give me some money today, and I'll guarantee you a spot to build you something in 2028 or 2029. That's what's going on in the marketplace. Emergency diesel generators, stuff that's being used for backup for renewables. So when the cloud goes over or the wind stops blowing, they're going to kick on an emergency generator. People want power all the time. Well, the price of those has increased 2.5 times in the last 3 years. This is just generally some of the trends that we're seeing with different things across the grid. Electrical stuff in particular is horrible. Supply chain problems, you can see what it was and what it is now. And that has an impact on costs, it has an impact on schedule. So let's hurry up and get to zero carbon by pick your date. Well, you're going to have to be accommodating some of these reality of this stuff. And in the manufacturers, it's not like there are dozens of people that make this stuff. There's probably 2 or 3 in the world that make this sort of stuff. And so you're pretty much at their mercy these days. A couple quick comments about nuclear. I've already commented about Vogtle. I don't believe we'll ever build another big, large plant like that. We haven't figured out how to contain the cost. Small modular nuclear reactors may be a different story if we're smart. I hope we can get over the NIMBY problem, the not in my backyard problem. We're involved in working with some folks. NuScale has got a technology, a company called TerraPower. TerraPower is in the middle of taking an old coal plant up in southwest Wyoming and saying, look, the steam turbine doesn't care where the steam comes from. Used to come from a coal plant. Now if it comes from a nuclear powered source, they can use the steam turbine, the generator, all the transmission lines, et cetera, et cetera. It's actually a Bill Gates funded activity. And I just got a note yesterday that TerraPower has got another new design and they're going to pay us a bunch of money to build a mock-up for how you would actually build one of these plants. So hopefully small-scale nuclear at some point in my lifetime will start to happen. Quick, to finish up here. 4 calls to action I would have about it. And again, we're at the bottom of the food chain. You know what? I can only build what people want built, where and when and how they want it built. So we'll keep doing that. But here's what I think would help this problem. And owners are reluctant to do some of this and spend the money up front. But I think getting high quality, the scope, how many widgets and things do I need to build, a good estimate of what it's really going to cost to build it, and a realistic schedule, that's all going to yield certainty. So the financiers, the bankers, wherever they're getting their money from are going to demand and need that. Better risk mitigation. We as an industry do a shitty job at risk mitigation. We might identify a risk, and then we just push it around the table until we get some idiot to take the risk, whether that person is capable of managing and mitigating the risk. So I wish we could do a better job. We need to do a better job of identifying risk, hopefully eliminating the risk or mitigating the risk, and then putting it with the right party that can manage it. Supply chain and inflation literacy. I don't think the world's going to go back to like it was, say, pre-pandemic. So I think you just got to be really smart about how you think about that. Are there lawyers here that you'll admit being a lawyer? Okay. You guys can write really tough contracts, but it doesn't do anything about risk mitigation. And so I think that we as an industry need to be smarter about how we write contracts, allocate the risk appropriately. We take risk all the time that we can manage, and we're happy to do it. So let's quit trying to play the lawyers. Oftentimes, they start with a blank sheet of paper, and it's horrible. So the legal community and owner community, right contract, I will guarantee you, does not guarantee a project that comes in on budget, on schedule. Embrace engineering, procurement, and construction models where you have the engineer, the contractor, the procurement people really, truly integrated. Some owners want to break those up into silos and then later try to integrate them in. Our experience says that doesn't work so well. When you have a truly good EPC contract model, it works and projects are more likely to come in on budget, on schedule. And lastly, use some technology. I'm very proud of what we're doing at Kiewit. We've got some great tools where we gather up all sorts of data that we create in our jobs every day, cost data, schedule data, design data. And we've created some really pretty interesting tools. I'm not going to go down to the list here because I know I'm over time. But we really are using data, creating our own algorithms in-house. We've got about 50 data scientists that work for us, and they are creating some things, but it's all geared to identifying risk, project certainty, and what it's all about, and efficiency. So that would be my last call to action there. So again, I apologize. I'm way down in the wheels. We're just the dumb contractor. We just build stuff. And so hopefully I've given you something to think about. Thanks again.